The bar was loud that night, neon lights flickering over stained wooden counters, country music humming through the speakers, and the smell of beer mixing with cigarette smoke. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance as if warning that something was about to change. Inside, everyone was laughing, talking, living in their small worlds, except for one woman who moved quietly between the tables, balancing trays and smiles that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her name was Lily. She was the waitress everyone liked, but no one really knew. She wore long sleeves even in summer, always keeping her head down, her movements graceful but careful, as though she was hiding a secret. Her kindness was quiet. She'd give free coffee refills to the lonely old man by the jukebox, wipe off tables for the other servers, and even pay for a homeless man's sandwich from her own tips. But no one asked why her hands trembled sometimes, or why she flinched when someone raised their voice. That night, a group of bikers rolled into the parking lot, their engines growling like thunder. The bar doors swung open and the room turned heavy. They were loud, rough, and intimidating, leather jackets, tattoos, and the kind of silence that demanded space. Among them was one man who stood out, big, scarred, his name stitched on his jacket, Mason. He was their leader, known for his temper, his strength, and the legend that he didn't believe in mercy. The regulars whispered as the bikers sat down. Lily approached them nervously, her tray shaking slightly in her hands. Mason leaned back in his chair, watching her, and gave a half-smile that made her shiver. "Just water for me," he said in a low, gravelly voice. But when she turned, one of his men laughed, saying, "Boss, you goin' soft." Mason didn't answer. He just stared at Lily as she walked away. Something about her reminded him of a ghost, a fragile thing trying to survive in a world that didn't care. Shamrock, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of humanity, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more true and touching stories to life. Shamrock. When Lily came back with their drinks, Mason noticed the edge of her sleeve had slid up for a moment, revealing a dark bruise, purple and yellow against her pale skin. She quickly pulled it down and forced a smile, pretending nothing had happened. But Mason saw it. His jaw tightened. He didn't say anything, though, not yet. The night went on. People laughed, the jukebox played a slow tune, and Lily kept working, ignoring the pain in her wrist. She had worked double shifts all week, rent was due, and she couldn't afford another late notice. Her life was built on surviving one day at a time, never expecting anything better. Then it happened. One of the younger bikers, drunk and reckless, made a crude joke and grabbed Lily's arm when she tried to walk past. She froze, panic flashing across her face. Mason stood up instantly, his voice booming, "Let her go." The bar went silent. The biker laughed, "Come on, boss, we're just having fun." But before anyone could react, Mason's fist connected with the man's jaw, sending him crashing into the table. The entire bar stopped breathing. Mason's voice thundered, "You touch a woman like that again, you answer to me." Lily stood there, trembling. Mason turned to her, eyes softening for a moment. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded weakly, backing away, mumbling that she was fine, but her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped her tray. Later that night, as things calmed, Lily came by to clear Mason's table. He reached out to hand her a few crumpled bills, but his fingers brushed her wrist, and she flinched hard. That's when it happened. The fabric of her sleeve caught on a jagged edge of his ring, tearing a long rip across her arm, exposing the truth beneath. The entire bar went still. Beneath that torn sleeve was not just one bruise. Her skin was covered in old scars, fresh marks, burns, a map of years of pain. The sight froze everyone in the room. Lily gasped, clutching her arm, her face turning red with shame. Mason stood frozen, his hand still outstretched, his voice stuck somewhere between rage and heartbreak. Someone whispered, "What the hell happened to her?" Lily dropped her tray, her eyes wide and wet. "Please don't look, I'm fine." Her voice broke like glass. She tried to pull the sleeve back down, but Mason gently caught her hand, not to stop her, but to steady her trembling fingers. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw what everyone else had ignored. He saw pain that had been silenced too long. In that moment, the biker with a violent past saw something that broke through his armor. Mason slowly took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "No one's ever gonna hurt you again," he said quietly. And for the first time, his voice wasn't commanding, it was kind. Lily shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You don't understand, he'll come for me. He always does." Mason's eyes darkened. "Who?" She didn't answer, but her silence was enough. Mason turned to his men. "Stay here," he ordered. Then he walked outside into the rain, his fists clenched, his jaw set. The others followed. That night the storm outside grew fierce, lightning flashing across the sky as Mason's bike roared into the darkness. Hours later, when he returned, his knuckles were bloody, his jacket soaked through, but his eyes calm. He didn't say what he'd done. He just walked up to Lily, who sat crying in the corner, and placed a small envelope on the counter. "He won't be bothering you again," he said simply. Inside the envelope were papers, her hospital bills, her unpaid rent, and a note. "You deserve peace." The bar owner, an old man who'd seen too many broken souls pass through his doors, stood silently behind the counter. He nodded once, understanding something sacred had just happened in his bar. Over the next few days, things began to change. Mason and his men started showing up not for drinks, but to help. They repaired the bar's broken lights, painted the walls, even fixed Lily's old car that had been sitting useless behind the building. The other customers began treating her differently, with more respect, more care. It was like the tear in her sleeve had torn something open in everyone, a reminder that people hide battles no one sees. But for Lily, healing wasn't easy. She'd spent years believing she wasn't worth saving. Every kind act made her cry, not because she was sad, but because she wasn't used to it. Mason didn't push her. He just sat quietly at the bar every evening, sipping coffee instead of beer, waiting until she was ready to talk. One night, when the bar was empty and the rain tapped gently on the windows, Lily finally spoke. "I was 17 when I met him," she whispered. "He promised me a better life. Instead, he gave me bruises. I kept thinking he'd change. But people like that don't." She paused, staring at her reflection in the glass. "I stayed because I thought no one else would care." Mason nodded, his voice rough. "I used to hurt people too, thought it made me strong. It didn't, it made me empty." He took a deep breath. "You're not alone anymore, Lily." She smiled through tears, a small trembling smile, but real. Word spread in the small town. People began coming to that bar not for the drinks, but for the warmth it carried. The place that was once filled with noise and smoke became a place of laughter and hope. Mason's biker crew, once feared, started volunteering at shelters, helping fix bikes for kids, raising money for women in need. And every time Lily walked by, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: safety. Months passed, and the scars on Lily's skin began to fade. Not completely, some pain never does, but they no longer defined her. One afternoon, Mason found her standing outside, sunlight touching her hair, watching a group of kids play across the street. She turned to him and said softly, "You saved me that night." He shook his head. "No," he said, "you just finally met someone who saw you." That night the bar was alive again, laughter, music, friends. Lily wore a short-sleeved shirt for the first time. When someone noticed the faint lines on her arm, she didn't hide them. She smiled. "They remind me I survived." And Mason, the man once known for rage, just smiled quietly from his corner, his heart lighter than it had been in years. Shamrock, if this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share it with someone who believes in kindness, strength, and second chances. Every interaction helps us keep spreading stories that inspire and heal. Shamrock. Speech balloon. Before you go, comment below. What do you think true strength looks like? Power or compassion? The bar that once echoed with fights and shouting now echoed with something stronger: laughter, forgiveness, and a sense of family built not by blood, but by empathy. And on the old wooden wall above the counter, someone had hung a small wooden sign that read, "Scars are just stories of survival." Lily ran her fingers over the letters every night before she closed up. She still worked hard, still had bad days, but she no longer hid her arms or her past. She knew now that sometimes it takes the roughest souls to show the gentlest mercy. And somewhere deep in her heart, she believed, maybe for the first time, that even broken people can help others heal. The night the biker ripped her sleeve, the whole bar froze in silence, but what followed thawed every frozen heart in that room. And from that night on, none of them were ever the same again.